We're live. Yeah. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Brain Milk by the Halfway Posts or Halfway Cafe here on Substack. I'm Dash McIntyre. I'm here with Adrian Polk. Adrian, you want to talk about yourself? Shout out anything you're working on. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, I've got a Substack, so follow. That's pretty much it. You can click my link on the some way here. But yeah, click subscribe, follow. It's free.
That's free. Free 99. We got a lot of news to talk about, obviously. First up, the Iran war. Let's see. Would you say it's going better or worse than you expected? Did you see this coming at all? Were we wagged into this by Israel? Is Epstein blackmail involved with this?
A lot of
Feel free
questions
to just
there.
start cooking. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd say at the front end, I think a lot of people always thought that Iran would be kind of a bigger fish to fry. I think the fact that we have air supremacy so easily, I mean, it seems like we're basically operating with impunity, right? So far, the only casualties they've reported are a loose drone or missile that didn't get hit by an interceptor or something and hit kind of an unprotected part of a base and like a building or something. And so, I mean, in that way, it's kind of a resounding success for our military. Granted, the problem with all of these kinds of wars is that when you want regime change or another country to change how they operate or do stuff, it's a political issue and not just a military one. So we can drop bombs all day until the cows come home, but that doesn't actually make the IRGC just surrender like Trump wants, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in the IRGC. They have a lot of weapons. They still, have soldiers throughout the country. They have control of the country, and I guess there's reports that they're starting to arm the Kurds, but without any boots on
Although
the
the
ground.
Kurds have kind of pushed back on that, saying that they're not doing it, and they remember all the times they've been fucked over and done a lot of the heavy lifting for America, and then Trump screwed them over multiple times by not helping them out and or giving them like funding and arms. And there's been like the Kurds actually released a letter citing 3 instances in which they kind of were on the offensive and had good positions, but then get kind of sandbagged by America, and then probably lost a lot of good fighters and a lot of good people because of, Trump did not make good on that promise.
What were those
Um,
3 times? Were they all Trump? Because I know Trump kind of did that once in his first term, pretty bad.
well, Trump did it really bad in the first term, but for against ISIS, the Kurds were really kind of the ground troops on a lot of the anti-ISIS efforts. They're in
Hmm.
northern Iraq, northern Syria, and kind of northwest Iran, which it is kind of interesting. I think the Kurds are the largest minority group in the world without self-sovereignty and a kind of self-determined nation. So, I mean, if one, we've kind of helped the Kurds in a way in that, like Syria, with Bashar al-Assad being gone, and now they have relative autonomy in northern Syria. Same thing in Iraq, obviously. When we first went into Iraq in 2000, or I guess the second time we've been into Iraq, they did a lot of the fighting, and they actually did not kind of declare independence and make their own little Kurdistan in northern Iraq when they really could have. America really got them on board of helping keep Iraq like a kind of a nation state and stop the country from breaking up. And then the Kurds supplied a lot of the actual manpower for fighting the insurgents and keeping Iraq relatively stable, and at least in terms of like their territory and borders, a kind of functional government. So I really hope Trump doesn't just try to make the Kurds do a lot of the fighting so we don't have to have boots on the ground and then fucks them over again.
Yeah, I mean, they're really a travesty of history because they asked for a country during the Treaty of Versailles era, like after World War One. And I think Lawrence of Arabia, in the book, Lawrence in Arabia talked about how he warned that if you don't give the Kurds their own country, it's going to be a cluster for the Middle East for
Yeah.
generations. And I think that's kind of been borne out. And they're kind of screwed over people just because they do, like you just said, they have huge populations in 3 countries, and they don't have a great history in that. So I guess we'll see. I mean, something's going to happen, right? If the IRGC doesn't give up from just being bombed, and like it's not like the civilians can just magically take the country from the IRGC if they're going to fight back, right? And if the IRGC doesn't
Yeah.
just give up and surrender, then there's no boots on the ground, as they say. So I guess we'll see. Right now, they're saying that there's not going to be any U.S. soldiers there on the ground, like U.S. Army types, but I mean, to some extent, like if we're arming different groups in Iran or certainly the Kurds, you can probably bet that there's probably special forces there that they're hiding the, it's pretty secret that they're there. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's like Vietnam, right? There were security
Yeah.
forces and advisors there for years before they publicly acknowledged that we were there and stuff. So I guess we'll find out what happens. But right
Yeah.
now,
And
it
we
seems like we're just bombing them, hoping a political solution just comes out of thin air, I guess, and I guess we'll see if that
Yeah.
happens.
Although, yeah, like you said, we'll see because Trump is also now saying that he was looking at some Iranian leaders. Like he a couple of days ago, he was just kind of calling a lot of outlets and just ranting. And on one call, he apparently made
I
news.
did not hear
Oh,
that.
yeah, yeah. So on one call, he was basically saying, "We think we have leaders who will be able to take over in a kind of like Venezuela situation where we're not actually doing regime change. We're just picking a new leader, I guess, who will play ball with Trump or something." However, if we did that, if we just picked a random person in Iran or maybe the Revolutionary Guards to just start taking over, I don't think the rest of the country would be on board with that, and he might have a pretty short life expectancy if he's all of a sudden just willing to do a deal with the great Satan of America and Israel.
Yeah, well,
So
I saw a headline. It was like,
Real quick though, and then on the second call, like he was doing a bunch of calls, and then on a call right after that call where he said, "Oh, we got some people we think we might be able to do a deal with." He called the next like outlet or whatever and said, actually, just kidding. We killed all those people, so now we don't actually have any contacts." And
yeah,
he came out, I think it was yesterday or the day before, saying that, or did a post, like a real legit policy out, like rolling out of a policy. He just said that he should be able to have a say in who the next leader is, which I don't think the Revolutionary Guard is that keen on giving Trump veto power over who they pick for the next supreme leader. So
yeah,
TBD on that.
yeah, and I saw a news article today, like headline. It was saying like Trump, I don't really care about democracy in Iran, and
Yeah.
it's like just like Venezuela. It's like the slowest softball pitch, just right down the middle, could have
Yeah.
swung another home run. He's like 0 for 2 on that. Like,
Yeah.
come on, like just say you're for democracy. Like, I mean, to some extent, like there has to be like the ruling class in Iran has to have some say in the future, right? Or
Yeah.
they're not
Right.
going to be on board. And so, okay, you're going to arm all the ethnic
Yeah.
groups that hate them, and then you're going to create a civil war. Like that's not. And then obviously the IRGC doesn't want to start losing parts of their country, and they definitely
Yeah.
don't want to be on the losing side of a new political order that keeps them down. So yeah, I
And
don't
we
know.
definitely don't
It's
want a civil war like in Libya or Syria or Tunisia, where you get all these. Like Iran is made up of a lot of ethnic groups because the borders were kind of created by European colonial powers after World War One, right? And like obviously Persia has a long-standing history and has a people, but I think Kurds make up like what 10% of the population. There's a bunch of other groups. A lot of Iran is mountainous, so it's a lot of kind of like tribal areas where there's not really that much federal centralized control. And if we just start arming all these groups and now they just want to take, if everyone's going to do kind of a melee for Tehran and take the capital, like that's how we really fuck up a country and just create a massive civil or I guess human rights catastrophe.
No, absolutely, and we'll see what happens because I think it's probably fair to say that Israel probably doesn't care what happens to Iran, and they would probably if they're just like going to bomb Iran to the ground right now and then not have to worry about it for 10, 15 more years, like that's probably a good outcome for them. And I think this goes back to discussions we've had a bunch, and I don't know if you've updated your thinking about this, but it's so like obvious that like it's in America's interest as like, the global superpower and also a capitalist society that cares about freedom and human rights and stuff that like it's in our interest to have like every
And
country.
exporting all our goods and making a ton of money, just having everybody being free to buy all the stuff we want to
Yeah,
export them.
yeah, exactly. Like everywhere in the world, I think it's fair to say that if like the GDP per capita just went up by $10,000, that would benefit
Yeah.
America more than any other country. Maybe Iran, China as well, but like it obviously benefits America to have a country of 90 million people be a stable place where you can do
Yeah.
business. And then, I mean, destroying it to the ground, keeping those resources down. If you create a civil war, like you're going to have like all these warlords rise up and they're going to be extracting resources. And, American companies aren't going to want to deal with Iranian warlords, but, who will? Russia and, China. So
Yeah.
like it actually, the less stable a country like Iran will become because of this is actually more in the benefit of China and Russia and far less so
Right.
America. So any way you cut the national interest, whether it's a democracy in the Middle East, whether it's a, place that respects human rights and doesn't fund proxy terrorist groups all over the Middle East, like all these things you can point to like, like Wicket 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down. And then they go, it's about oil. We don't care about democracy. We may start a
Yeah.
civil war. It's just, like, I hope it doesn't become the outcome that it,
Yeah.
really could be.
Now, what do you make of the reasoning and the rationale, like why we're in the war? Because Marco Rubio put his foot in his mouth a lot, basically saying that Israel was going to strike them. And if Israel struck Iran, they were already going to just start bombing America because we're so kind of complicit in a lot of Israeli, like foreign policy and military strategy for sure. But then, that went against what Trump and Hegseth were saying, that it was all it was all preventative and it was just purely out of defense, which is ironic because Hegseth keeps saying, oh, we're war fighters. We're going to dominate every war. And it's like, you guys are talking about a war a lot for something that you're calling not a war,
Yeah.
right? They're trying to pretend this isn't some kind of war. And then on top of that, they're already moving the timeline. So it was like just a few days of bombings. And Trump was, I guess, hoping like Venezuela, they would just sue for peace right away or something, or, just deal with whatever we did to them and just maybe like we can find somebody who will play ball. But Iran is not like ideologically, perhaps religiously, certainly not geopolitically a country that is just wants to play ball with Donald Trump and do whatever he wants, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's interesting too because their strategy of basically decentralizing the Revolutionary Guard, right? So even with all of these people dead, and kind of interesting too that the Ayatollah was kind of bombed at his own compound, like not even underground, like not really. I guess maybe it caught him by surprise, or maybe he's old anyway and wants to be a martyr or something for his country or something.
Yeah,
But
allegedly.
it's just kind of a giant mess because they are so decentralized. So a lot of these missiles going off. Apparently, it's like a lot of these commanders just essentially have free range to just fire at will because of the kind of policies that they put in place. If like our government is decapitated, just start firing off. And so like I think it's up to like 10 or 11 countries now have been bombed. Like
Hmm.
randomly, they were sending bombs into Iraq. It's so decentralized. Somebody was making the joke that maybe there's just some Iranian that like still is pissed off about the 1980s war in Iraq. It's just like, let's just fire one off at Iraq, those assholes over there. So kind of a mess. And everything's so decentralized. Like I guess they picked the Ayatollah's son to be the next supreme leader, which is, I don't think his life expectancy is very long if they're literally picking a family member of Khamenei or whatever.
I believe Israel's stance on the new leadership selection is that we will kill him,
Yeah.
whoever it is.
Yeah.
No, but I'll say so. It's like it's so funny because people are like, "Oh, I like Israel is going to do this anyway," and it's like, "Oh, you're in the White House, you're the Secretary of State of the United States of America. You don't think you have any fucking power? Like,
Yeah.
I don't see why they don't just call up Bibi Netanyahu and said, "Hey, we just ordered the Abraham Lincoln to go east. Good fucking luck."
Yeah.
And the Ford is going back home. It's already been out for like 10 months or whatever. So, I mean, it's absurd that these people say, "Oh, we had no power over it." I mean, it's just an excuse. It's obviously a lie. And if it's not a lie, then it's another example. We talk about this like all the time about how people don't understand power and how to use it.
Right. Um, Now they've been moving the timeline, so now they're saying even like up to 8 weeks worth of bombings. They're kind of putting their toe in the water about having ground troops. And again, we talked about the mountains and Iran really being kind of like a mountain fortress of a country. Like if we thought Iraq was a struggle, which is pretty flat and just kind of filled with desert, that's relatively easy for drones to fly overhead. Like Iran is filled with mountains, and I'm sure a lot of their bases, missile like bases and launching points are probably all underground and in mountains. So this is not going to be an easy war. And I don't think Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth have the competence or like attention span even to really focus on a long-term ground invasion, right? I mean, that would just be a disaster for us. Like, how many American troops would die? And we haven't, of course, declared war, so they're kind of using the flimsy rationale of the authorization for force from like Afghanistan and Iraq. So now that's like going on 25 years now, and we're still invading countries off of this super, you could say outdated and obsolete authorization for force. What do you think of?
Undemocratic,
Yeah.
to say the
What do you
least.
make of Congress's just cowardice to go on record and basically declare war? They're all just giving Trump, I guess, as much room as he needs or wants to do whatever he wants, independent of Congress, despite how much that's spitting on the Constitution and the checks and balances,
Well,
and
it's like
of course the founding fathers' intent for
yeah,
Congress to be able to declare war.
it's like the political version of like the two armies fighting each other, and they're like the one side's like, "Oh, we can't give up. We need a stronger position." And it's like, "Oh, we can't give up now.
Yeah.
We're winning." And
Right.
it's like,
Right.
"Oh." So Congress doesn't want to have to do anything because they're afraid they'll take a bad vote that people will like, I don't know, hate on them for, or they'll make a mistake. So, I mean, it's cowardice not to vote for it. Like they should obviously have a vote for it. And I think the Democrats are trying to force that, right? Like, so they made them vote on the War
Well, they tried,
Resolution
but it
Act.
failed.
Yeah. And they're, well, I mean, yeah. And then it's like, I heard that, uh, Ro Khanna, I think, is trying to pass a bill in the House, basically like tell like to do a vote for the Iran war, even though he's against it. He just wants to force everyone to actually have to
Yeah,
vote
right.
like positively or negatively for it. So yeah, I mean it's bad. Like I mean the American people deserve it. Like our represent like I mean the way our country is founded, the Constitution, the Federalist Paper, like 150 years of American history is like Congress ought to declare war. You know, we haven't been doing that since Korea, right? I think Korea is the last time we
Yeah.
formally declared war. And like
And the whole point of abolishing monarchy was just that the king doesn't have the right to spend any money he wants, doesn't have the right to just start wars with whoever he's personally, uh, hates.
yeah. And like, you know, there's US citizens who are in the military, like they should be their
Right.
their you know, duty and you know, the obligation that they serve for the country is voluntary and like I think the government like run by their fellow citizens because like Trump and members of Congress are just fellow citizens, like they have a, you know, they should be respectful of the fact that like, you know, if they're going to be asked to go do something and potentially die, like, you know, they should have the representation of the entire American people actually say, yes, we need this. This is in our national interest. And it's not just like the president doing it unilaterally.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty obvious that this is not in our national interest. You know, Trump fired a lot of people in the military. I guess just kind of picking and choosing which generals and admirals or whatever would actually agree to just doing whatever he wants, right? And even now, prior to invading, there was a lot of comments from like obviously former, but even current military leaders that were basically saying this is not going to be easy. It's probably not a good idea, but I guess Trump being the commander in chief, they have to do it. I guess if
Well, I mean,
feasibly there's some legal argument that it's legal, right?
right now it seems like
And
it's easy,
thanks to
but
everybody for the love, by the way, real quick. They're saying I love the Halfway Cafe. Thanks to everybody for watching and for enjoying my comedy.
no, what I was
Shout
going to
out to
say
all
though,
y'all.
Uh, and this is an interesting question. Like, is it in America's national interest? Like, well, maybe. Like, but this gets into the political question. Like, okay, we're bombing people. How does that solve a political issue, right? Like, for
Right.
example, like the whole Afghanistan war was like, if we just keep bombing the Taliban, do we make them respect human rights? The answer is no, they
No,
don't. And it's like,
20 years or 25 years later, the Taliban's in control of the government right now.
yeah. Yeah. So it's like the same thing in Iran. Like, it's a political issue. We want them to change their government. It is maybe you could disagree. I think it is probably in the national interest of America to not have Middle Eastern countries run by like autocratic dictatorships who have like some crazy, you know, world ending end times ideological belief and commitment that they need to martyr themselves to, you know, remake the Middle East and, you know, keep down the Sunnis and stuff and wage war against the
And
great
accomplish
Satans, which
jihad against all the infidels.
yeah, the great Satan, which they've included us as, you know, great Satan. So like, you know, in terms of national interest, again, like, you know, maybe it is in the national interest to make a, you know, peaceful, stable country in Iran if we can, right? Now that begs the question of like, okay, well, how are we going to do that? And, you know, okay, we've eliminated the regime. And then the, you know, the question of what comes next is again a political issue. And they don't seem to have thought about that. And they've accidentally killed the people they had in mind. So it's like
Yeah,
literally
right.
like just throwing a dice into the air and everybody's like around the world just like, oh, I wonder what it's going to be. And
Yeah,
like, you
right.
know, the IRGC included, right? Like how far is America going to take this?
Yeah.
If they bring
And
the
it is
US, yeah.
it is interesting too because the Ayatollah was really, really old. There were rumors that he had cancer and maybe he had like, he was what, like mid 80s or something like that. So he probably didn't have that long to live anyway. I mean, what's the better roll of the dice? Just waiting to see if maybe Iran like picks a new Ayatollah that's a little less crazy or certainly younger and maybe of a generation that isn't just like Israel and America, the great Satan because of things that happened in the late 70s and throughout the 80s, right? Like, maybe that would be a better roll of the dice of just generation change of Iran's leadership.
But let's be real. Like, would anything have probably changed that much in Iran if he died? Like, I doubt his son is some liberal reformer who's going to like go,
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean?
Well, I mean that's probably true, but I mean, like for instance, let's talk about all the ways this could go south real fast, right? Like Iran could, Iran has so many of these cheap drones. We're wasting what, like missiles that are tens of millions of dollars to shoot down these drones that are like
Yeah, they're
$20,000.
like a
And
million to 2 million each. But like the thing they're doing though is they're taking out. So when they launch them, we're able to find them, and we have aircraft and just take them out. So they have like missiles, obviously from trucks. We've been hitting the
yeah,
trucks. We've
yeah,
been
the drones are pretty mobile, and I guess as long as they have some kind of mobile thing, they can just start launching them from wherever, as long as they have some kind of truck or bus or whatever, right? But
Yep.
like, let's say we start running out of stockpiles, right? Because I mean, Trump, he's always projecting. He truth socialed out that like we have our stockpile is so good, except Biden.
Yeah.
It's like the cupboards are bare kind of thing. So he's blaming Biden while also saying we have more than enough munitions to take care of this. So you can tell that obviously that's something that people are talking to him about. Is like, hey, we don't have weeks or months worth of like anti-drone missiles to launch, right? And now it's very ironic that he's kind of a little bit begging Ukraine for help with the drones, because Ukraine is very sophisticated with drones that take out other drones for really cheap, right? So a little ironic there. On top of that, it's like such a mess with Russia, because Russia's helping Iran with intelligence and pick American targets to start bombing, while we're kind of on Russia's side against the Ukrainians, while the Ukrainians are helping us defend ourselves. It's like giant clusterfuck. But in terms of the ways that this could go bad real fast, like what happens when Iran just starts bombing all of the what is it, the desalination plants to turn seawater into fresh water, right? Like the most of the Middle Eastern countries don't really have a lot of fresh water. They really depend on taking salt water and turning it into drinkable water, right? Obviously, they're going to start losing a lot of money if Iran keeps fucking with the oil refining companies or plants, and then they can't export any of that oil, right? Like out and in the Red Sea right now, there's tons of tankers just waiting to be able to leave the Strait of Hormuz and not be bombed. So, I mean, you could conceivably think that real quick, all of our Middle Eastern partners are going to be not that helpful to us, or not interested in even supporting the war, if all of a sudden now they're dealing with potential revolutions and protests, right? Because their people have lost their fresh water, they've lost all their oil money to not just bribe all the groups of people with money, and like they're kind of like aristocratic classes, right? That have power, if not power and money, if not actual political control, right? So already you see like Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the Emiratis being a little cautious right now, and not go. They're putting out messages that they're not really. Obviously, in the background, I think it's been reported that they've been pushing Trump to attack Iran, but I don't think they want it
Yeah,
to be
so
bombed
congrats to
relentlessly
Tiger
too.
BitChute too, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
and I'll say like, to some extent, like these countries should have had fucking plans for that. Like every military does red teaming. Like, oh, what will the enemy do? And if we do this, what
Yeah.
could they do? And it's like, okay, that goes back to the lack of planning, and like this is like a roll of the dice. They're trying to see if it works. Like, we've been very fortunate that not a lot of Americans have died. Like a lot of those Gulf countries haven't been hit as bad as much as they probably feared. Like they could have been, like military planners and people who like, do geopolitics for a living. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like, do I think the Gulf states are going to have revolutions if they get hit more? No. And like, yeah, the people can probably, they'll probably suffer more than obviously Americans will. But like,
Well,
also those countries aren't
are
going
you
to run
talking
out
about
of
short
money.
term or medium term or long term? Because I mean, let's say Iran really starts bombing the shit out of like Saudi Arabian water and oil, right? Now they have no money and no water. Like, what? Don't you think a lot of people in these Middle Eastern countries might be like, why are we helping Israel and America destroy a fellow Islamic nation? I mean, despite all of the things that they've said in the past and all of the, when they start running out of water and resources, right, very soon they're going to start maybe taking an anti-Western, anti-American, certainly anti-Israeli stance, right? And you get kind of big populations in Saudi Arabia, the Emiratis, right, that maybe don't even really support their governments anyway, and now they're being allied with these people that are or with like America and Israel that are so thoroughly destabilizing the Middle East once again, opening up maybe another occupation, and who knows how many wars or years of war, right?
I guess maybe. I guess I'm just a little skeptical that like the people, like, I mean, as far as we know right now, they still have interceptors, so they're probably saving some in reserve for things like that, critical infrastructure like that. I imagine we're doing everything we can to degrade their ability to target stuff like that and take out. So if like they launch some drones, I guess the question is, okay, what's the range of their drones? What can be hit? Are they making, that's another question. Are they making preparations right now? Like, oh, maybe this isn't going the way we thought or hoped.
Yeah,
And like,
right.
what are they doing now to fortify the desalination plants. And I hope their capacity is not, they're not 99% capacity of water needs right now. So if one goes down, people start going thirsty. But I guess we'll see. I don't know anything about that. But I mean, that just goes to like all these countries are going to reap what they sow, right? Like everyone was afraid of Iran and thought that like their military is formidable. It turns out that it's probably not. And so far we've been bombing them pretty successfully. And, I don't know. I mean, to some extent, like, do you think the IRGC will just keep going for the next couple months? I guess, it's possible, but do you think they're
Yeah.
gonna?
I mean, it's also possible you just have like literally a generation of just terror attacks all throughout the Middle East and against Israel and against America, right? Because now all these Revolutionary Guard people that still have contacts all around the Middle East, right? Like Iran's got all kinds of networks, and obviously Israel's been very successful kind of destroying a lot of those. But you just need like two guys in a truck going somewhere and just, setting off a bomb in a giant marketplace or a subway or
True.
something, right?
No, that's true. That's a good point. Like, yeah, that's we've really opened up a hornet's nest, and I guess we'll see how many hornets get out and who they sting. So,
Yeah, right. Let's see. In terms of, let's see. I
should we
just
talk
wanted to
about
point
Cuba next? Because they said Cuba.
to.
Trump said today Cuba's next. It's,
Oh my God. Well, yeah, apparently Trump's just doing everything he can before he dies. Just, starting kicking a bunch of hornets nests, right? Like we bombed Ecuador. Israel's now bombing Beirut and apparently kicking, like telling, what is it, like 400,000 people in southern Lebanon or to like leave, right? And so
well,
Israel's
didn't
probably
we?
going to just take a lot more land.
What we did in Ecuador was like, wasn't it in concert with the government and against like drug dealers and cartels and stuff?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah,
So
I
I mean,
guess
like
so.
maybe maybe that's a plus too, going after some cartels. Like, you know, I not not the way I would do it, not the way I would plan it out,
But
right? But like,
isn't it? Yeah, but it's kind of becoming a like we're just bombing indiscriminately, maybe too many places. Like, is our focus really? Can our focus be everywhere? Right? Especially if we're going to send boots on the ground in a kind of slow mission creep that just keeps going longer and longer. And then, oh
I mean,
no, these Iranians, we
yeah,
need another surge, one more surge, and we're so close to pacifying the Iranian people, having democracy, right?
yeah. I mean, I guess we'll see. I mean, Trump's doing a lot of things that are like, decade long problems that like it kind of makes you wish that people 40 years ago had like dealt with some of these things. Like, before the cartels took over like so much of the economy and got into like agriculture and
And
avocados
became
and
like
like,
probably
yeah,
like low key trillionaires of like illicit markets all around the world. Because
yeah. I
now
mean, and
they're diversifying their money quite a bit outside of just drugs.
yeah, I mean, like, look at a country like Iran. Like, that's part of the political issue. Is like, okay, so you're going to take the IRGC out, but okay, they're the military, but they also like, I'm sure all those generals run tons of businesses. I'm sure they have tons of money in estates. They probably own land, right? So, like, okay, you want to like, you always have to have a situation politically if you want to like, I think do this in a politically smart way or in a strategic way, right? You have the tactical, operational, and strategic, and like, so if you're going to be strategic about something, do you have the people who control all the weapons and control the money and the economy? Like, do you give them an out or not? So if you say you're going to kill all the IRGC, well, what obligation or why are they going to work with you if they're going
Yeah.
to die and they're going to lose all their money and all their land and wealth? I mean, it's a shitty situation for everyone else because it's like obviously decades of corruption and they've stolen the wealth from the people and the people have hurt while they've lived high lives as, much as they can in Iran and stuff. And like, even if they become a nice, stable place in a democracy, like all the IRGC generals are just going to leave the army and just control most of the economy. But, you know, you don't want a situation where like all the infrastructure and police stations are destroyed, all the civil services
Right.
and stuff are decimated, and
Like a
then
debathification thing where
yeah,
now there's just no society anymore.
and you're going to create a civil war because like the only people with power are going to be local warlords who control food or access to like things like water or energy and stuff, and like and then there's no ability for the state to exert control because like the police have been killed or bombed, the police stations, and like all their infrastructure is destroyed. So yeah, it's a bad situation. But you could say the same thing for some of those South American countries because like, cartels have ruined them. Like see like how much violence there is day to day in like places around Mexico, like outside Mexico City. I mean, it's a horrible situation. And like, I don't know if bombing them, to your point, is like the right solution, but like, I don't think like the whole world has done a particularly good job on most of these issues. I mean, you go to Africa, like look how much shit's gone on down in Africa, all the coup d'etats, all the civil wars, all the, copper mining in the Congo and how absurdly like stupid that the global international world just puts up with that and allows that. I mean, it's absurd. So, I mean, you know,
Yeah, but what do you do though? Because I mean, like you could say in Iran, we started sanctioning them after the revolution, right? When they had all those hostages, and then Reagan had that kind of like backdoor deal with them to kind of win the election and fuck over Jimmy Carter, right?
yeah.
And then we basically, after propping up Iran and giving the Shah all kinds of weapons, then we took Iraq's side against Iran, and then they fought a horrific war for 10 years, and we propped up Saddam Hussein in Iraq, and then Iran like just keeps doing like terror networks all throughout the Middle East, fucking with all the Sunni neighbors that they hate, right? And then we tried different things, like Obama had a deal and they didn't really exactly stop their terror efforts all around the Middle East, right?
Well, I
And
mean, I just think, sorry to cut you off, but I just think there's so many like political options that could have been taken. Like if you think of like, okay, entrepreneurs find ways to make money in business, right? They create a business, find a need, blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing in
yeah, do you
politics,
have do
right?
you have any concrete ideas though what they could have done? I mean, I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah. I mean, like
we
here's
have
one.
flip flopping presidents to try a lot of stuff, and now everything just keeps getting worse and worse, and now we're maybe gonna occupy Iran with
Yeah, I
ground
mean,
troops, right?
one right off the bat is just like, okay, like the relationship in the Middle East between like everyone hates Israel and the Arabs hate Iran. There's Sunni Shiite issues. Iraq, had a long history of all that like sectarian violence and stuff and issues. And like, what if in 2019 and 2020 when they did the Abraham Accords, what if all those Middle Eastern countries that are secretly working with Iran just said publicly, like, Israel, or not Iran, sorry, Israel. All the Arab countries working with Israel had just came out and said, you know what? Israel's not the great Satan. We have, disagreements on this and this and this, but like, hey, we're not going to just publicly say we hate Israel. And like, how does that realign everything, right? Like, what if they made a united front against Iran and said, okay, we're going to work on this stuff? I mean, look at like the Gaza issue. Like, no, who in the Middle East gave a shit about Gaza? The Egyptians like put a fence up and said, you can't come in here. The
Right.
Jordanians didn't want them. Syria was in a civil war. Israel was just going to do what they did. All the other Arab countries looked away. Like all these countries continually do like, well, I'll say, members of Congress today, it's like politicians, people in power all over the world will do the simplest thing that gets them through today without thinking. And this is my point all the time. No one thinks about overarching strategy. No one is willing to do anything that is inconvenient and annoying today to make a better future
Or
in a week or a
possibly
month.
temporarily politically disadvantageous.
Yeah. And like, that comment about like the Arab countries, like that one discrete thing they could have done. I mean, there's other stuff they could have done, just like Republicans in Congress today could just criticize one thing that Trump's done in the last week and say, hey, we don't
Yeah.
like this. Or, like privately go to them, because I don't think that's happening. I think we'd hear it because it would probably be leaked because Trump would be trying to exert power over Congress again. But like, how many Republicans could just privately reach out to Trump and his people and say, hey, this ain't happening. Like if you don't like cut the tariffs out, cut them down, we're going to exert our power. But they don't do that because they're afraid of a single day and a single tweet that might, make their primary marginally harder. Or, God forbid they lose their cushy job.
Yeah, no, that's very true. A lot of geopolitical problems, obviously, with this whole thing. But what do you think about the drama over Israel? Like, do you think Israel wagged us into this war? Do you think Netanyahu has been trying to do this for 40 years and every president told him to fuck off except Trump, whether it's blackmail, bribery, or just Trump's an idiot and, easily
Yeah.
flattered?
I think 100%. Yeah. And that is just based on like, Marco Rubio said Israel was going to do this. So we had to be ready to
Yeah.
act because we had intel allegedly that like Iran was going to try to schwack us too. And like, we don't know if that's actually true, but it's like, okay, they literally said Israel made us do this. So I think to your question, yes, yes, I believe what they're saying.
Yeah. I had a thought. I mean, obviously, this is a little bit in jest, but like, the amount of money that we have spent fighting all of kind of Israel's enemies throughout the Middle East, I had a joke thought that like maybe Israel should pay for our health insurance, like a universal option for America, because, we've spent literally the better part of $40 trillion that we're currently in debt fighting all these wars on a credit card, right? And I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but people speculate, maybe Israelis knew 9/11 was going to happen and didn't act to do anything about it, or some people even in the U.S. government, or there's Epstein files that are mysteriously missing around 9/11, and like some comments about like a shadow 9/11 commission, and that painting Epstein apparently had of George W. Bush with paper airplanes, like a painting of him sitting on the floor with paper airplanes. So some suspicious shit there. But like, at what point do we cut Israel off of funding and like stop giving them, what is it, like the $10 billion a year or whatever,
Well,
while
it's
they
complicated.
have way better social safety nets than we do in America.
Well, yeah, I mean, like going into Iraq didn't help. Being in Afghanistan for 20 years or whatever didn't help. But I will say, like, it is complicated because, like, Iran, or I keep saying Iran, Israel is a democracy in the Middle East, and we have a special relationship with Israel. And, like, has, a couple individual politicians in Israel taken that pretty damn far? Yes. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, like,
Yeah.
I don't think we should ever hurt the Israeli people because, like,
Yeah,
Netanyahu
yeah.
doesn't
To
have
be
a
clear, the
99%
Israeli
approval
people are
rating.
chill. It's the government that fucking sucks, in the way that most
Yeah.
Americans are chill. But Trump's a crazy psycho.
Well,
But
I
do you
guess,
think?
well, before you go on, I just think that like that's the point of like, okay, like what is Trump doing right now? Like, is it a little crazy? Yeah, but like Iran is a disruptor in the Middle East on purpose, right? They arm Shiite and proxy groups all over the Middle East. They want to be top dog there. They want to kick America out. They hate Israel. They want to keep, they want to hurt Saudi Arabia and the Emirates if they can. They
Yeah,
definitely
but that's
would if they
also, haven't
could.
we been fucking them over completely? Like there's a lot of speculation that like most people in the IRGC at the top levels are just Mossad agents who don't know each other, right? There was that guy that just got arrested by the IRGC because he miraculously has missed like 10 bombings that killed a lot of other Iranians, but he's managed to like skate by on like all 10 of them. But I think I heard that he was arrested and even killed by the Iranian government. So
Well,
and like
here's something
even
for you.
when the Ayatollah died, apparently Israel like minutes later got like photo evidence of the body to get an ID. So clearly, someone close to the Ayatollah was probably like on the
Yeah.
Mossad payroll, if not some like super deep agent, right?
Well, that's there's a joke about how shitty like the Iranian government is and how everyone hates their own government in Iran and how horrible it is because they said Iran's the only country where CIA operatives and Mossad can just go anywhere in a public place and be like, raise your hand if you want to be a spy against your government. And people
Yeah,
just, yeah, I want to be a spy. So
yeah.
like, that's a joke, obviously, but it's like obviously indicative of something. So yeah, I mean, Iran's like a horrible country. It's led a failed state, basically. They keep all the wealth from the people, right? They keep the people down. They keep women down. It's a horrible place for human rights. They like murder people in the streets or whatever, do public executions and stuff. Like it's horrible. And that, like, that's not to say that it doesn't also happen other places in the Middle East. And that's, an indictment on them, and Americans and the State Department should, speak out about injustices like that. But, to some extent, like, America's top dog. We want to be top dog. We want to protect our national security. I believe technically, and my understanding of social science and things like economics and human rights and political science, that like people thrive a tad better when you have
Yeah,
human rights in capitalist markets, and
yeah.
you don't have a
And
ruling elite.
some degree of choice on who your
Yeah.
leaders are.
Yeah, exactly. And like, so if we know that to be true, and I would argue that like social scientists have proved that, like, well, maybe we ought to be doing things to try to bring that about. Like, for example, it's like the CCP and like the level of control that they have over their people. Like, we wouldn't like that here. And if we don't like it, and they're just going to export that if they can, and they're going to take over more areas, they're going to take over the whole South China Sea. They want to take over Taiwan, and it's just like, should we fight against it? Like, yeah. And then like the other thing, it's like, yeah, do I hate the fact that like I think I saw a report yesterday that they're estimating that like we're spending like $980 million a day on the war in Iran right now. And it's like, if you think about that, you're like, that means every day you could have given 1,000 schools across America $1 million. Here's
Right.
$1 million school in blah, 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 Iowa and blah, 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 Minnesota. But instead we're dropping bombs in Iran. But like on the other side of that is like, hey, Iran, you could have had a functioning, country with a open market where your people thrive, and then you'd be better off too. So like if we're gonna be top dog, at least we're gonna spend the money to keep other people from hurting us or hurting other people. And it's like people say, oh, it's so terrible we spend so much on defense, but if we're actually defending anything like capitalism and human rights and freedom, not in like the George Bush sense, but like in a liberal kind of sense of values, like we should be doing that. And it's an indictment on the rest of the world that there's so many
Yeah.
dictators who want to keep other people down.
Yeah. But obviously, the expense is just wild. Like, is this really our problem? Do we have to get involved? Should Israel just stop picking on everybody and starting these wars? It's like when
Yeah.
the jets got shot down by, I guess, what was it, the Emiratis or something? One of the Middle Eastern countries shot down like 3 of our jets. So it's like American tax dollars for those missiles going to destroy our tax dollars that paid for those super expensive jets, right? So it is in terms of is there a little bit of a broken windows kind of corollary here of just
Well, I don't know.
destroying everything and wasting all our money?
Well, it goes back to like the comment like I've made a couple times now that if America disappeared tomorrow, how many wars would break out in the next year? Probably a lot. And then, if all the American equipment, military equipment we've sold all around the world disappeared, what would happen? Well, those people, instead of using our equipment, would just pick up sticks and go kill each other and try to steal each other's
Yeah,
land.
or
So, like,
AK-47s.
yeah. I mean, it's like, look at Europe. Europe used to like, a cursory glance at the history of Europe is like every European country and polity basically every year getting all their soldiers and trying to steal land from each other for
Yeah.
400 years until the
Yeah,
invention of the
steal
atom bomb.
all the farm resources and burn down all the villages. Yeah.
Yeah. And like that was probably, I bet like living through the 30 years war in the 1600s was a shitty time to be
Yeah,
around
right.
and living, especially in Germany and Central Europe at the time. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, the fact of the matter is like that's how life is. And like, we the a maybe this is a little ideological of me, but like the idea of Madisonian democracy being a good thing where we respect human rights and people are allowed to own property and that like some, dictator executive can't just arbitrarily take everything from everybody, send them to die, send them to jail, etc.,
Yeah, I
make them
agree. I agree
slaves.
in theory, but also like the Iraq war that lasted what, like 15 years and 250,000 people dead, and then kind of back to a status, like a relative status quo in the Middle East in terms of Iraq being a country that's kind of fictional and maybe shouldn't exist and has all these minority groups that don't really belong together and
Well, I mean, like,
struggling.
you don't want to like. I don't want to get into like an esoteric philosophical argument and debate about like a chicken and egg situation, but like it is true. We probably would not have done Desert Storm if Saddam Hussein had not invaded Kuwait. That was a personal choice he made, and so you're like, oh, the
Yeah,
Gulf
that's true.
Wars.
Right.
And the second time, like, it turned out that he was lying about the chemical weapons, but he did a pretty damn good job of convincing people that he was.
He wanted us to believe that he
Yeah,
was a
and so
threat.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, would if Saddam Hussein had made it publicly known that like apparently people say that like he spent the last couple of years of his life in power before 2003 like writing fucking poetry, like maybe if he'd worked a little harder to show that to the public we wouldn't have invaded again. And it's like the same, I don't know, you go in it over and over and over again, like
Well, to be fair, if you get into power by killing all of your closest allies
yeah.
and then keeping bloodthirsty, like an iron fist on the country, maybe the sentimental poetry you've written is not the dictator play.
Yeah, and I'll just say this: like when the Cold War ended and the Soviet Union collapsed and Russia became kind of an economic basket case, like what did America do? We cut our defense spending so much they literally called it the Last Supper for defense contractors. Like, do you have any doubt in your mind that if like America collapsed, that China would just unilaterally stop like investing in their military and their capabilities and stuff, or would they 100% start the preparations to invade Taiwan like a week later or the next day, or like a phone call from Xi Jinping in moments? Hey, get the boats ready. We're going in 3 hours or something like that.
Right.
So, I mean, people hate on America and they say the military industrial complex is such a bad thing. And like, yeah, to an extreme it can be, but like our military industrial complex exists to basically keep other dictators from just stealing land, stealing people, killing people, and basically ruining the world for a stable capitalist system to function where people have the freedom to what you said, choose their own destiny and choose their own life.
Yeah, but we got to pick our own battles, right? We can't do it everywhere, and we don't do it everywhere. So, like in this instance, is this really our fight to have regime change in Iran, a country so far away that it's not really fucking us at all
Well, I
anymore?
mean,
It's maybe
yeah.
fucking some of our allies, and you could say it's maybe destabilizing the price of oil and resources and trade and things like that ultimately do get back and harm Americans in some kind of like a measurable fashion, right? But is this really our war? Should we spend another $10 trillion and another 10 or 15 years on another forever war in this country? Like, is this the right time and place to choose one of these, pat America on the back for being such a conscientious police
No,
state kind of war?
no, and yeah, obviously the pat on the back is kind of going on the wayside the last couple of years with everything that's going on, and like we might not even be a Minnesotan democracy in like 8 months. So I guess we'll see. The
Yeah,
jury's out on
right.
that one right
Yeah,
now. But what I'll
yeah.
say is like, do I believe that what we did starting February 28th of 2026 in Iran was the best possible thing we could have done? Like, fuck no. But do it like, the fact of the matter is like, uh, there's a lot of places on Earth that are in desperate need of uh, a stable political outcome and a political decision to basically not try to wage war with your neighbors and potentially work on nuclear weapons so that you can kill other people and neighbors and stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. I guess I forgot your exact question, but yeah, I mean, I don't think that what's going on right now is ideal, but like,
Yeah.
it's probably
What
not
do you
the
think
worst
about
thing in the world.
what do you think in terms of Trump's domestic politics? You think, I mean, this war is pretty unpopular. It obviously has the potential to go real bad and to spiral out of control, right? What do you make of Trump doing this now, kind of like in a midterm year? Is that misguided? Is this going to really trash Republican approval ratings? Is this going to be bad for all the Democrats that maybe vote for it or don't, work hard enough to stop it? Do you think, not to throw too many things out at you, but do you think APAC now has kind of jumped the shark and maybe that's going to be a litmus test in like Democratic primaries over how much money from Israel you've taken? Like, I mean, probably a lot of liberals are going to have problems with that, right? I do think APAC is maybe not going to, there's going to be a lot more Democratic candidates from now on not taking APAC's money, maybe even some Republicans, like kind of MAGA, like Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of types.
Well, I'd hope so. I mean, to some extent, like again, like and that obviously I don't think any of the White House is going to see it the way I do. Like I think they should kind of like stop allowing so much influence and power and especially donations from like Israeli groups that are so like obviously they're not even like American partisan, right? They're pro-Israel partisan, and they're like, I think that like some of the I'm not going to say a conspiracy theory, but I think it is probably true that a lot of those groups probably do care more for Israel day to day,
Yeah.
especially for big important issues, and they probably care about America. And I think that they are, funneling money specifically to candidates who are going to do what's in Israel's interest, not American interests. And like, do I think most of our interests align? Probably, right? And I think that's fair to say. But yeah, I mean, I guess in a democratic system, I would hope that when you see like such extreme overreach and absurd activities by the government of Israel, and essentially our own government is admitting that they forced us into this war, like that's a terrible thing, and
Yeah.
I think
Right.
Democrats should push back. But do I think like I don't think it should be. Well, I guess it gets back into the whole like Iran conflict thing in general. Like, is like I don't think it's necessarily going to be a litmus test for me, at least, that like all Democrats need to oppose this war, because I think like while you can oppose like how the Trump administration is handling it, I think you can still have the idea of America's national interest in your mind. And, a broken
Well, what do you
clock
think
is
about the
right twice
spending
a
bill?
day.
Should Democrats vote for that? Right, like the authorization vote failed, but should Democrats stonewall some kind of funding bill? Right, like
I
the
think they should
the
tax the rich. They should 100% say we will fund this, but it is coming from taxation, that we are
oh, that's
creating
a
a
good
new
idea.
tax
Yeah,
structure
I like that
right
idea.
now. We are taking
Yeah,
your money every single pay period
yeah.
right now. And if
Elon
you
Musk has to spend $1 billion a day
yeah, I mean
to
like
pay for this war. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, to some extent, like, we have an all volunteer Navy, all volunteer force. So, like, the fact that like the average citizen's kids aren't going, that leaves a
right.
degree of separation between the average voter, the average citizen going about their day. And then, it used to be that like, oh, people knew people in the military or had family members in the military. And then it used to be, oh, people knew people who were in the military. And
Yeah,
now it's like people don't even know people who are in the military. And I
yeah.
think that's a
It's
problem.
kind of insular. They all live in military communities and things like
Yeah.
that, and it's just
And,
the
and
kids of
even,
former veterans are enlisting.
Yeah, and even taxation, like, right, you just get like the same amount taken out of your paycheck every single pay period. Like if you get a raise, maybe you get a marginally higher like tax rate for some portion of your money. So like you're so removed from like, okay, this government is arbitrarily spending $1 billion a day right now on something we don't necessarily need to be doing. It's also involving killing people and literally putting
Yeah,
Americans at risk abroad. And you could make an argument that like there's, the FBI is on high alert right now for sleeper cells in Iran or Iranian like sympathizers who want to like just go shoot up a school or a movie theater or something. So like this is having real costs, and that's one of the biggest indictments on George Bush, George W. Bush, that is, like when we went to war in Iraq, and then paying for Afghanistan. The fact that he said like everyone should get a tax cut, everyone go to the
yeah.
mall, pretend
Go
like
buy
nothing's
TVs.
happening.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
right.
horrible. And like those are our citizens, our fellow citizens are wearing uniforms. They're going over there. They're at risk. Some of them have died. They're going
And
to
we're not paying
continue being at
any
risk.
minor inconveniences for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, what the Republicans still probably would cut taxes if they could. And, Trump has been talking for a year and a half about how the tariffs are going to give everyone like a bonus or something, or, a check, which is obviously not going to happen. And now it's not even constitutional. So it's like,
Yeah.
like
And
not,
apparently it's been ruled we have to pay interest for as long as he doesn't pay.
I didn't hear that. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think in a perfect world, if you're going to go to war, okay, fucking turn on the taxes right now. We are not
Yeah,
like, I mean,
that's true.
essentially,
If we're not going to pay any consequences at all for the average person, surely the billionaires that have the most disproportionate effect on picking and influencing our leaders, they should definitely have to pony up for this.
yeah. And I mean, that's another thing too. I mean, like you can get really creative. I doubt this would be constitutional, but like, if the political system is going to war, like maybe defense companies don't make profit. Like, if we're actually
Yeah,
physically,
right.
like you can, but I mean, there's like I'm not gonna, that's not a hill I'm gonna stand on. That's just a quick thought I had. But like,
Yeah.
the idea is that like our country is going to war and the citizens have no involvement. And, some of that is the White House's fault too. They don't even tell us why we're doing it and they're lying
Yeah,
to us.
right.
And it may have been another country forced us to do it. And, it could very well be that the Epstein files, like, I heard an interesting story that there's like a alleged story that some people have told on podcasts that I've heard that allegedly the Israelis like tried to blackmail Bill Clinton in like the 90s because of like his affairs and stuff and the Monica Lewinsky thing. And so if they were willing to try to blackmail Bill Clinton 8 years ago, like I have no doubt that Trump, who's the president who's probably the most blackmailable in American
Yeah.
history,
Yeah, yeah.
well,
Because he's stupid, easily flattered, greedy, a pedophile,
yeah,
and perverted. Yeah, he's
yeah,
like
and
the Goldilocks Patsy.
yeah. So I mean, if they were willing to do that 28 years ago or whatever to Bill Clinton, I have no doubt in my mind that they wouldn't
Yeah.
try to blackmail Trump if they were like,
And
"This
Trump
is
wouldn't even
existential
realize
for
it.
us."
He'd be like,
Yeah,
they love me. They're just sending me women and money. I must be a genius.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's absurd. We live in absurd times, obviously.
we really do. Do you think this will influence the 2028 primary on the Republican side, like Marco Rubio and JD Vance? Like it seems very anti-America first and
I think
anti-MAGA.
I don't even want to talk about 2028. I think we have to get through 2026 and have like the likely blue wave of Democratic members of Congress
Actually
actually
get
be
seated.
seated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
before we should worry about 2028.
That's yeah, maybe that's fair. Yeah. Anything else you want to add on Iran before we change topics?
I mean, I don't know. I guess I could give a hope. Like I hope the IRGC realizes that, like, hey, maybe okay, they killed the top one echelon. They're going after the top two echelon, and like, oh, I'm
I
down
think
here in
they're
the
already on like echelon 3 or 4 now.
well, yeah, yeah. So at some point, there should be people
And
who
echelon
realize
5 is just all Masadi.
yeah. Well, I mean, and this goes into like Cuba too, because like, at some point, like, okay, the writings on the wall for the, the Cuban leadership, like,
Yeah.
okay, like if you're like in the circle around the leadership of Cuba and you're like just out, like some of those people should be thinking, if we just
Maybe
like
it's a
give
good
up,
time to retire.
well, retire or like, hey, if we like, and that's another thing I find amazing. Like, is there any doubt in your mind that if Cuba were just like, let's say magically Cuba's government goes, okay, we're gonna be pro human rights right now. We give up. Communism failed. We're going to be a democracy right now. Imagine how many billions of dollars would flow into Cuba in investment,
Yeah,
in
right.
foreign direct investment a day, right? And then
Yeah,
all those people at the
immediately
top,
tourists going and just investing just billions of dollars
yeah, and there's like people at the echelon
from the bottom
two
up,
and
you know?
the outer circles of the leadership of like, I wonder, I'm not toxic enough. I could run for like local political
Yeah,
office and start
yeah,
stealing all that money. And it's like
right.
for the
It's
for
like
their
that
own
Simpsons meme of what is it? Principal Skinner is like, am I the problem? No, it's
yeah.
everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, to some extent, like, yeah, I hope like Cuba doesn't have to get bombed. I mean, like, yeah, we're yeah, I don't know.
I guess real quick before we change topics, what do you make of like steel manning Trump's argument? Like I hear some people, the kind of people
Which
that
one?
it bewilders me that people think like Trump is some strategist and like I guess billionaires and like really rich people. There's some people out there that think he's just like a genius playing chess here. But like the argument I've heard is that it's kind of like disentangling Iran from Russia and China. And basically, like now that we've taken Venezuelan oil, I guess ostensibly away from China or something, that Iran is next and we're going to disentangle their oil and resources from China and get rid of one more partner of China. And it's all an effort to box out China completely. And I kind of steel manning, I guess, their argument I hear about Russia and Putin and why he's so pro Russia is just that we're trying to get Russia to invest in the West and Europe and America and open up all of their resources to American firms instead of Chinese firms. But like to me, it's hard to understand the steel man aspect of it because Putin has these delusions of grandeur, right? Russia hates America, hates the West, thinks the Soviet Union was like betrayed and
Well, they
never
believe,
should have disbanded, right? So, like, I don't think Russia, like, maybe you can bribe Putin or something, but I don't think the Russian people or most of the Russian government is necessarily going to flip on a dime and like leave BRICS, leave China, right? I don't
yeah.
think Iran, like, I don't know. What do you make of their like steelman arguments? To
What?
be fair to the other side or something. It's hard for me to fathom what they're
Yeah.
even like how what they are saying has any bearing to reality.
Well, I think so. First off, like the one of the most important things, which is like kind of borderline conspiracy theory, is like it's hard to steelman anything until we know what the fuck is up with the relationship between Putin and Trump. Like,
Yeah,
the
right.
Helsinki meeting where he came out looking like a beat ass like little dog,
Yeah,
and then Putin
right.
looked so happy. It's like, okay, like before I can steelman.
Something went down there.
Yeah, so let's ignore that for a minute and like, okay, let's still. So I think the other side of it is like, okay, Trump likes Putin, so the right wing of our country had to come up with reasons why Russia is not that bad, and then you get into the
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson. Look at their grocery stores; they're not so bad.
Yeah,
And like,
one grocery store in Moscow is glittery and super high end.
yeah,
Wow.
when it gets into
As if they're going like 100 miles outside of Moscow and see the poverty that the average Russian lives in.
yeah, which is absurd because like the average Russian is so much poorer than like every other
Yeah.
European,
Poorer than
including
like Romania and
Ukrainians.
Bulgaria, I think, per capita.
Yeah, and so like there's the other aspect too where it's like
No
the
shame on Bulgaria and Romania, of course. It's
No, I
just
mean Romania and Bulgaria have
right.
developed a lot. They're and good countries. Like they're really powerful members of NATO. They care about like EU integration and
Yeah,
stuff. And
right.
like yeah, so yeah, shout out to Romania, Romania and Bulgaria. But no, so like
Yeah.
the other part of Russia is just like in the favor that they have among the right wing here is just that like it's kind of like that trad wife kind of bullshit like ideology, right? They just believe that Russia is a pro Western. Pro like Western civilization, pro like they're anti woke, right? Because they're
Translation white.
yeah. And it's like, I think I remember like hearing somewhere that like some religious leader in Russia, it was like 15 years ago, but said there's no gays in Russia. And it's like, that
Yeah.
can't be true.
Yeah.
But like,
Right.
yeah, so it's this weird like ideological belief. And it's also, it's like putting that like the pegs in the proper space because like Trump obviously likes Putin in Russia. So like that's part of it. But the steel man, like, yeah, I mean, I don't like Russia, has a lot of resources, but like so do other countries. And like we could completely just like stonewall Russia. And like we don't get a lot of stuff from Russia, but like, a lot of European countries kind of deluded themselves into thinking that somehow Russia would magically transform itself, against the wish of most.
Yeah. But there's a lot of like Trump and Kushner kind of affiliated groups and companies that I guess ostensibly would start like drilling all that oil, taking all that timber and opening up all those resources, right? But like I keep thinking about the fact that like Russia really is like centered around Moscow and Leningrad, and most of Russia, particularly the
Leningrad, what year are you in? St.
St.
Petersburg?
Petersburg, sorry, St.
Yeah.
Petersburg. But most of Russia, east of the Ural Mountains, right, is not really like filled with white Christians that we think of when you think of Russia, right? And so, like right now, Russia has so much of its military being destroyed in Ukraine that, like, I keep thinking that, like, like Russian disintegration is just as plausible as like their regime keeping control of all that land, right? There's not a lot of military presence there. It's not like Putin is giving a lot of money and funding and resources to all those people and their schools and hospitals and things like that. There's a lot of areas of Russia that like kind of live still pretty traditional lifestyles in terms of, like there's a lot of Siberian peoples that
Who
are,
don't have
not.
washing machines and tried to steal them
Yeah,
from
they're not
Ukrainian
living
houses.
exactly developed lifestyles and standards of living. So it's interesting to think that, like, I guess I have this thought that maybe steel manning, to be fair to, like, I guess the Trump idea of foreign policy is that we don't want Russia to fall apart and then maybe China just take all of those eastern territories. And already, aren't there something like 1,000 square kilometers or something that China already thinks is Chinese territory? And there's some border disputes, of course. But like now with the military being degraded and, there's the thinking that maybe Russia, if they ever tried to send some nukes, like maybe those missiles don't work and maybe those nukes don't work. And maybe they've just, the kleptocracy has ruined and sold all of that shit, like all the jet fuel and stuff for the missiles. So like, to steel man it, is there any reason to like want to preserve Russia's government over all of its territory just to keep like, I don't know, China from taking all that? Or
Well, it's
is
ironic,
there
like
any reason to think that or be worried about that?
it's kind of ironic because these shitty dictatorships actually benefit from like the respect for sovereignty that the rest of the
Yeah,
civilized
right.
developed world is kind
Yeah.
of propped up. So like, yeah, I mean, like, could China take
Mhm.
it from Russia? Absolutely, except for the fact that Russia has nukes. Like, do I think like, I mean, I wonder if there's probably some people who, in a geopolitical sense, think it's probably good that we can keep China at least partially contained by having them have a dependence on other countries. Like, for example, most of their oil comes from Iran, right? And they get a lot of liquid what is it, natural gas from the Qatar and UAE or whatever.
Yeah.
So, like,
Liquid
you know,
natural gas. Yeah.
yeah, so they have a ton of resources that they have to import, which makes them inherently,
Right.
at
Yeah.
threat to things like, boycott of products or
Yeah.
whether it's our
Supply
treasury
chain
doesn't let them trade. Yeah,
disruptions,
supply
the
chain
choke point of
disruptions.
the Strait of Malacca that most of their
Exactly.
resources have to go through.
Yeah, so like geopolitically, it does make sense to keep them from that. But like, do we have to prop up Russia? And like, in a perfect world, like if Russia were to collapse, you could just like recognize those places as individual countries and then that respect their sovereignty. Now, the
Right.
question is like, would China
Should
actually?
Mongolia just go Leroy Jenkins just start invading a shit ton of Russian land?
No, well, yeah, and then the question is like, okay, like let's say you have some Siberian republic that comes out of some hypothetical breakdown of Russia. Like, is China just going to invade and steal it and say it's ours now? But then you get into like the whole like, China's
But
been
they don't really have to
quietly,
invade and steal, but they could just start doing, extend the Belt and Road Initiative, start building a bunch of airports
yeah,
and highways and stuff. And then just, you owe like 50% of your resources now, or you owed us or something, right?
which is like actually strategic thinking, where you actually take control
Yeah.
of the resources and you don't
Right.
go to war and
Without
just
alienating all the people and
yeah,
killing your people in a war.
yeah. So that is actually strategic thinking. So
What do you think of, some people were kind of speculating that it might break out into World War III, right? Like China and Russia moved a lot of assets into like the Iranian area, right? And they're certainly China's
are they
monitoring
assets
things.
or are they just like signals intelligence because they're trying to like get every little bit of information
Well, yeah,
how America
exactly. Some
wages
kind of
war?
assets that are able to take a lot of intelligence, study the way our missiles work and the speed, practice, maybe trying to see if their targeting systems can
I mean, yeah, I
take them
wouldn't say
out
they're
or
like
something.
military assets. They're just like intel collectors. Like, and China doesn't really send a lot of their ships outside of the South China Sea and East China Sea, and the western parts of
Yeah,
the Pacific
independent of
Ocean.
that specific though, like, is there, or is that even maybe like you could say a missed opportunity from the kind of axis of like Russia, China, or Iran trying to fuck over America? The fact that Putin's not helping, like, right? Remember when the Ayatollah got killed, and then Russia was like, "Hey, all of our defense treaties were with the Ayatollah. He's not here anymore."
Oh, really? I
Uh,
didn't.
yeah, yeah. I think they use that little loophole to get out of like directly sending Russian, troops to the to help defend or whatever.
Well, that's incredible. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
and that gets like to the
That's funny too. It's like all these dictatorships. It's like they never hold up their end of the bargain. They're never trustworthy. They always fuck over all their allies, right?
which is why like it's so annoying to me like when Trump demonizes Europeans like and it's like say what you will about like the internal domestic politics of Spain, which none of us should give a fuck about. Like that's their business as sovereign democracies. But like
Yeah.
he's saying we're gonna eliminate all trade with Spain because they don't support the war in Iran. It's like we have a navy base in Spain. Like I don't think you can say
Yeah.
Spain doesn't help us and isn't
Yeah.
a part
Right.
of like yeah. So I
Yeah,
mean
they
it's so
sent troops to help us. They didn't find a loophole to not go to Iraq and Afghanistan with us.
yeah, and it's the same thing when Trump is like complaining about like the cheese protections that Italy and France have on American
Yeah.
cheese, and it's like a good ally, unlike the dictatorships like you were mentioning. But like France isn't going to go to war with us because we put a 10% tariff on cheese. But
Yeah.
imagine like you can imagine a situation where dictatorships and autocracies like they do get little pissing fights because you didn't help me with this or you backstabbed me on this and like yeah they're all in it for themselves. So like. I guess we'll see what happens. It is funny. I did not hear that about how, hey, we had relationship and treaties with the
Yeah.
Ayatollah, not you guys,
Yeah.
not you
Oh,
chumps.
yeah. Oh, it seems the guy who signed this is no longer alive. Yeah. Yeah. Let's. Any other last thoughts on that? We've been talking probably like an hour now on that, but we got a lot of other good things. You got some free time? You want to still keep
Yeah,
talking?
yeah.
All right, let's talk about Kristi Noem being out. That's big news. Kristi Noem out, being replaced with Mark Wayne Mullen, who is maybe like one of the dumbest people in Congress.
You can
Nepo
tell.
baby.
You can
What?
tell. You take the most cushy job on the fucking planet as a
Yeah.
United States senator from a state where you don't even get like you're not even
Yeah,
like
there's no
space.
serious primary, right?
Well, you could have a primary, but you're not the opposite party's not a
Oh yeah,
threat. But
yeah, yeah.
like,
No
yeah,
serious general election. I meant,
yeah.
yeah.
Your job is to go sit in the Senate and just like, be on TV and shit post
Collect
all
a
day if you
paycheck.
want.
Yeah,
And you're gonna go into the executive branch where everyone hates you and yells at you, and you have
yeah.
to follow these goddamn rules and regulations,
Yeah.
and
And
you're
right
to
away, you have to deal with like ongoing human rights violations and civil rights violations that like you're being sued. And certainly you're, probably, and you probably, I think Christy Nome should definitely be prosecuted. She's already like lying under oath many times. She got fired ostensibly because she basically said Trump knew about her spending what, like $200 million on that ad campaign that features her prominently. And that was a big no-no because,
They need to, what they really need to do is bring back that position or role that Harry Truman had, which made him vice president and during World War II, whereas like the member of Congress who just goes and investigates where all government money goes and just like
yeah.
tries to find corruption and fight it. And it's like, you're telling me they're going to spend like, what was it, $200 million on an ad campaign? Okay, like first off, why does the federal government need that big of an ad campaign for ICE? And second off, you gave
Yeah.
it to a company that had only been registered as a company for 8 days. How is that
And it
not
was owned by one
corruption?
of her like staffer, like one of her campaign staffers or something like that, or is it
Yeah.
like someone affiliated with her actual government work
Yeah, why doesn't
or
Tom
political
Tillis
work?
bring that up? And then, like, and I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, he did a pretty good job raking her over the coals.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, I mean, the corruption is just breathtaking. I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah, and the whole thing with Corey Lewandowski, I keep seeing posts about how like I guess it's a barely kept secret that they're banging, and she got asked about it under oath, and then she didn't answer. She had a non-answer answer of like, "This is garbage. I can't believe you like bring up this what you say tabloid like BS or whatever." It's like notice she didn't say no. you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, like,
Yeah.
there's so many people like Cash Patel just partying in Italy during the
Right.
Olympics. Like, I think did we mention that last time? Like, can you imagine Robert Mueller like going
Yeah.
to a locker room like chugging beer? Like, come on.
Chugging a beer. Yeah.
But like that
James
shows
Comey.
like the
Right.
lack of professionalism. Like when you're a professional person, like everyone talks about it's just like you don't make a fool of yourself. You don't do embarrassing stuff. You don't go partying on
Yeah. Right.
camera if you're like a senior government official who's a constitutionally appointed job. Like, Robert
And
Mueller
not
used to.
only that, the head of the FBI, which has to be like, both constitutionally and morally, and, certainly aesthetically has to be like a super no nonsense, cut and dry kind of person.
Yeah, Robert Mueller wouldn't even wear a colored button-down T-shirt because he thought that would be
Yeah.
too unprofessional.
yeah. Right.
I guess he didn't think about he could have been chugging beers with the boys all night every
yeah.
night.
Right. You had a good note here. Do you think Trump's setting up future presidents for a bad situation, like just clusterfuck after another? Like, obviously, Venezuela is like an ongoing mess. Like, will the next president keep stealing the oil?
Well, imagine like,
Threatening.
okay, let's say hypothetically Gavin Newsom's elected president and Trump makes them a deal with the IRGC where nothing changes. We just stop bombing
Yeah.
them and it's just like, okay, so like allegedly the IRGC is going to stop being bad. And then Gavin Newsom's elected and then like, they're just going to dare him to fucking start a stupid, erratic war again. And like, why wouldn't they just go back to doing whatever the hell they were
Right.
doing?
yeah.
Like,
Nothing really changed
yeah,
except maybe they bribed Trump. They like, spent $100 million on his crypto coin or something on the
yeah.
way out or
Well,
in the
and then it's
last
like,
year or something.
yeah. I mean, I guess to some extent, it's like the madman theory. Like, if, okay, you've convinced the rest of the world you are a madman. So then when a stable, normal president comes in, like other
Yeah.
people who've
Right.
been, I don't know,
yeah.
dismayed by fear of what you may do to them, you may send
And
two carriers around
yeah.
the world to bomb them. But yeah.
The madman theory I hate so much, or that people act like that's some kind of like genius geopolitics, but it's so dumb because as it's like the Spider-Man rule: with power comes great responsibility, right? Like
Hmm.
America, as the strongest country and the most sober country in the police state, should just be like, to every country, if you do this, we will do this. It's going to be proportionate. It's going to be, like you got to know what we're going to do. And sure, it doesn't make for like a great social media post or a cable news interview or something of just like some crazy guy where you literally have no idea what he'll say or what he'll threaten or who he'll threaten, right? But like as the world power, like everybody should just be on the same page. If you don't do what we're telling everybody to do and you're not playing by our rules, this will happen and we'll do this and everyone will be be on our side and we'll isolate you and fuck you over. And you can just keep digging your own grave, but this is how it works and this is what it's going to be. Don't fuck with us, right? Like the madman theory is so insane. And I would say it is not working for Donald Trump.
The
It is
Charlie
not.
Day strategy, the wild card.
Yeah, a wild card. Yeah. Like when you like the history books when they have a Trump doctrine, right? He keeps trying to like trademark the Trump doctrine. Like, what would that even mean? And like, how would history books like describe that when it comes to Venezuela, where they just abduct the leader and say, "Oh, everything else can go back to business. Oh, but we'll keep 50% of the oil profits. It'll go in this Middle Eastern bank account that only Trump has access to." Like, what is that? What is that?
Well, the
Trump
Trump
doctrine?
Yeah, the Trump doctrine is inherently not like repeatable or replicable. Like no other politician will be
Yeah.
able to
What?
replicate
Yeah.
this like supposed strategy, the 4D chess that we're witnessing day to day.
So dumb. Let's see. Hold on. Let's go to some other notes
Well,
that I
I guess
had.
to your point about the madman theory, I mean, I think it's safe to say that it's not like the most optimum strategy. So first off, like what has gone wrong that you have to try to convince people that you're a fucking lunatic? They like
Yeah, right.
your normal stable man words don't do the trick, and like, oh, we'll trick them into thinking we're like unstable, but you
Yeah.
know.
We might nuke you. You don't know. Wild card, bitches. What did you make of his State of the Union? Did you watch it at all, or what did you make of the commentary?
I did
I don't know
not
if you did
watch it.
watch
I
it.
just heard
Okay.
clips of it and stuff. And like, I mean, I, it's just it's classic Trump. It's like an hour and a half of unadulterated Trump, right?
Yeah. I think though, if I was president, I think right off the bat, I would be like, fuck off with that clapping and standing. Don't say a fucking word. I'm going to talk over you. All you fuckers need to stop doing that bullshit where it's all so political over who stands and when they stand and will Republicans stand for anything a Democrat says and vice versa. Like, what a stupid tradition. First off,
Should
it
be
makes
a
the
one
speech
page
like
like note
twice as
to the
long. What's
yeah.
that?
It should be a one page note you physically write to Congress or like have like
Well,
a
that's what it
memo.
used to be up
Yeah.
until like Wilson or something like that. I think for like 70 years or something, it literally was that. But obviously now it makes sense in our digital age to like, just get the free press and free media attention, right? Like, I understand why like presidents should want to keep doing it, but it's just, they could definitely make it more efficient and more useful, right? Like Trump's not really laying out a bunch of policies. It was basically kind of just like a revenge tour and just kind of playing the greatest hits from his campaign rally speeches, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they had some policies. We'll see. Didn't he talk about like capping like the credit card debt and stuff and like the
Oh,
giving
something that he's definitely not going to
yeah,
spend any
well,
time
yeah.
doing.
Yeah. Hey, there were policies, it's just not going to do them.
Yeah. Let's see. What do you make of Mike Johnson sitting behind him and just smiling and clapping for everything Trump says? Like he's like such a little Keebler elf. But any thoughts on
Keebler
him
elf.
about? Yeah, he kind of looks like a little baby Keebler elf, baby face. But
I
like
have no comment
you
on
know,
that, but
in terms of his speakership, like, isn't he just the worst, weakest, most feckless, spineless Speaker of the House probably ever? Like, he's got so much power. He's so close to the presidency himself, and yet he exerts no influence on any current events whatsoever. They're not like they have this rare trifecta of government with full control of Congress, and they're barely passing any bills. And I saw an article that that the Republicans are in such disagreement that they are quite possibly not even going to take advantage of this year's opportunity to do the big all-in-one reconciliation budget plan. That
well, I'm
they're
glad.
so well, yeah, it's good for America probably, but isn't that wild that they're so incompetent and rudderless that they are not even taking advantage of a simple majority up-down vote that they can pass basically just a laundry list of funneling a bunch of money to whatever pet projects, random Congress people have?
Well, they have a funny conundrum because one, they can't do anything that gets ahead of Trump, and two, like some of the things that would be popular, they can't actually do because it would make Trump look bad. Because we're at the point now where if you mention like, hey, those like service members who died were heroic, they're like, oh, you hate Trump, and it's like you can't say anything.
Yeah.
But like, I would just say like, what are they going to do? Get rid of like inside trading? Like I bet the White House is up to their fucking eyeballs in insider trading, and they to go after
Yeah.
corruption. What are they going to do? Are they going to go after the Epstein files? Like, what can they do that doesn't make
Yeah.
Trump look bad?
Right,
Anything
right.
popular or anything that's makes government more efficient or like less authoritarian, anything they might do positively to benefit the American people takes away from the MAGA movement. I think so. They can't
Yeah.
do anything. They're gonna and just make Trump look bad.
And they
What
have
are
no
what are they going to
agenda.
regulate? They can't regulate executive power. They can't
Yeah,
regulate
right.
the Supreme Court. They can't regulate Yeah, I don't know. They can't regulate anything, and they certainly can't hold the executive branch to account for anything because it'll just make Trump look bad.
Yeah. Do you think they'll do some kind of just major tax cut and call it a day? Like they'll just,
Probably.
that's the one thing they all agree on. Just let's fuck the debt even more one more time before the midterms, and probably Democrats made a giant blue wave.
Yeah, maybe we've already taken all of our kids' money for the future. Maybe we can start tapping into our grandkids' money for the future,
Yeah,
which is so
right.
wild because they're doing this, they're living like this, and then they're like, well, maybe we can ruin our currency so this debt doesn't look so big, so we can spend
Yeah,
more money.
right. Right. Yeah. Maybe we can really inflate the economy while unemployment is rising really fast at the same time already, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's dumb
Um,
because like now the economy is starting to sour. Like they had the 90,000 jobs lost report
yeah,
today, and
last
like so
month, yeah.
yeah, and like already like the Trump administration is like negative, I think, or like net like job
Yeah,
creation, so nothing.
manufacturing is going down. It's kind
Which
of
is
plummeting
ironic because
because
they
Trump's
kicked a bunch of people out, so you'd think their jobs would be available and that people
right.
would be taking them,
Yeah.
and anyone who wanted a job could find one. But like, yeah, so it's like it's like everything. It's like Keynesian economics is you save money when times are good, so you can spend it when times are bad. So we spend money when times are bad, and we spend way more money when times are good. And now,
Yeah, right.
it's like what happens when you have a 2007, 2008 crash, but then there were $40 trillion of debt. Like that's fantastic, isn't it? You're
Yep,
gonna have
and we
no
tariffed
means to.
all the other countries who are our allies that would buy that debt.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing
So
is
they
that
don't
like
wanna
Trump
help
and
us, and they want to disentangle their economies completely from, American just chaos.
yeah, I mean, like essentially, like when Trump came into office, he had nothing but tailwinds, right? Unemployment was low, inflation was coming back down, like
Yeah.
wages were going up, like
COVID
global.
was kinda over.
Yeah, I mean, like to a very small degree, some manufacturing jobs. It's like Trump had done nothing. He had nothing of tailwinds, and the economy would be great. Except he's instead like done the deregulation of the '90s, the Smoot Hawley of the '30s, the tariffs of like
Yeah.
the 1870s and '90s, and
Yeah.
like he's like doing every economic bad thing you can imagine when he had like the greatest economy
Yeah,
possible for a
right.
incoming president.
While pissing off all of our closest trade
Yeah,
allies, which is
yeah,
so weird. That's what I don't get. Like people who steel man the argument. It's like everything's about China, man. You don't understand. We're isolating China and getting rid of all their resources and access to money. Well, then why are we tariffing all our allies to just start saying fuck the sanctions and fuck American trade? We'll just go do business with China because Trump is willy nilly going 15% tariffs, 25% tariffs. Oh, Brazil's leader, I don't like 50% tariffs, right? Like, just how is that helping or how is that hurting China? The fact that China now will just be the new giant global powerhouse that they'll just go to for all their imports and exports.
yeah. Good question. I mean, and if like we
Yeah.
really cared, like we would just I don't know, maybe we could increase taxation a little bit and build more submarines or something. Build more missiles. Like we don't really. It's like it's kind of like the comment of like the aliens and like all the people in power don't really act like aliens are real. So how can they be real? Because you think
Yeah.
they would act different. And it's the same thing with China, like the Trump administration. If China, if you have all those people who are in the foreign policy circles who try to like do it like you're trying to do earlier and like genuinely steelman JD Vance's bullshit and steelman like Trump's like foreign policy and oh this is really in America's national interest, but then like oh yeah, so we're gonna make a trade deal with China. That's the goal. We're gonna have some magic trade deal with China, and then we're gonna sell them the chips. And it's like they're not acting like the things they say are actually important. But
Yeah.
that's another thing is like public policy is a very expansive field and it's very complicated and it can be hard to do. But like in the field of public policy, there's an infinite number of things you could do. Are you good? Or
Oh shit, little blood. That's odd. Maybe that's. Yeah. I got a cold, so I've been blowing my nose a lot. Maybe I just fucked the
yeah.
capillary. Well, we've been talking for an hour and a half. That's probably a good spot to end.
As you're
Yeah. Classic. All right. Thanks everybody for listening to Brain Milk. I'm Dash McIntyre.
Adrian Polk.
All right. Catch you later, everybody. See ya. Have a good weekend. Toodles, everybody.